The broken fleet Admiral Threxus gripped the edge of his command console as another shudder ran through the flagship. The Corthan warship Eternal Blade had seen better days. Actually, it had seen better hours. The ambush in the Keltor Nebula had been brutal and unexpected. 3 of his 12 ships were completely destroyed. The remaining 9 limped through space like wounded animals, their hull plating scorched and torn, their engines sputtering with each light year traveled. The Admiral's second-in-command, Captain Verosk, approached with his head lowered in respect. His orange scales were dulled with exhaustion, and the fine layer of ash that seemed to coat everything since the fire in Deck 7. "Admiral, our engineers estimate we have perhaps 2 days of travel left before the primary power core fails completely. After that, we drift." Threxus felt his twin heart sink. The Corthan people were proud warriors, descendants of apex predators who had clawed their way to the stars through determination and strength. Asking for help was not in their nature, but dying in the void because of pride was foolish, and Threxus had not lived to be an admiral by being a fool. "What is the nearest repair facility?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. Verosk's throat pouch inflated slightly, a sign of discomfort. "The Corthan military shipyards at Dravos Prime are 16 days away at our current speed. The Zenthari commercial docks are 8 days distant. However, there's one facility that could reach us in 18 hours if we transmit a distress beacon." "Which one?" "Orbital Forge Station. Human-operated." The bridge fell silent. Every officer present had heard the stories. Human repair docks were spreading across the galaxy like some strange infection. They were not the fastest. They were not the cheapest. Yet somehow, impossibly, they had become the most requested repair facilities in known space. Ships that had them marked on their navigation charts. Captains who spoke of them in tones usually reserved for sacred places. Threxus had always dismissed such talk as exaggeration. Humans were a young species, barely 2 centuries into interstellar travel. What could they possibly know about starship repair that the elder races did not? The Corthan had been building warships for 3,000 years. The Zenthari had perfected commercial vessel design over 5 millennia. What could humans offer except novelty? But his ships were dying and his crews needed help. "Send the distress beacon to Orbital Forge Station," Threxus commanded. "Inform them we require immediate assistance for 9 vessels with critical damage." The response came within minutes, not hours as was standard protocol. A human face appeared on the main view screen, female with dark brown skin and eyes that seemed to assess everything in a single glance. Her hair was pulled back in a practical style, and she wore a simple gray uniform with grease stains on the collar. "This is Chief Supervisor Amara Williams of Orbital Forge Station. We received your distress call, Admiral Threxus. We're dispatching our mobile repair fleet to your coordinates now. They'll arrive in 16 hours. In the meantime, I need your damage reports transmitted immediately so my teams can prepare." Threxus was taken aback by the directness. No formal greetings, no inquiries about payment or contracts, just immediate action. "Our ships have sustained severe damage. Hull breaches on multiple vessels, engine failures, weapon systems offline, and significant casualties among our crews." Amara's expression shifted slightly, something crossing her face that Threxus could not quite identify. "Casualties? How many wounded?" 247 injured, 38 critical. "We have lost 42 crew members." There was a pause. Amara looked down at something off-screen, her fingers moving quickly. "Admiral, I'm sending you coordinates for an emergency trajectory adjustment. It will cut 2 hours off our intercept time. Your medical bay status? Compromised. The primary medical facility on the Eternal Blade took a direct hit. Understood. I'm adding 2 medical frigates to the response fleet. They'll have full surgical capabilities and trauma specialists. We'll stabilize your critical patients the moment we arrive." Amara looked directly at him through the screen. "Admiral, I need you to listen carefully. Your crews have been through hell. The next 16 hours are going to be hard, but you will get through this. My people are the best at what they do. We will bring your fleet home safe." The communication ended before Threxus could respond. He stood there staring at the blank screen, unsure what to make of the human supervisor. She had not asked about his ability to pay. She had not questioned why a Corthan military fleet was in this sector. She had simply responded to the need with immediate, decisive action. "Helm, adjust course to the coordinates they provided," Threxus ordered. "All ships follow formation." The next 16 hours crawled by like 16 days. Threxus moved through his damaged flagship, checking on his crew, assessing the repairs his own engineers managed with dwindling resources. The ship groaned around them, metal stressed beyond its design limits. Every Corthan aboard knew they were one critical failure away from becoming another statistic in the void. When the human repair fleet finally appeared on sensors, Threxus found himself back on the bridge. What he saw surprised him. Instead of a few tugboats and repair vessels, dozens of ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. Not just repair craft, but the medical frigates Amara had promised, supply haulers, even what appeared to be mobile fabrication units. The human fleet moved with practiced precision, each vessel taking position around the damaged Corthan ships. Threxus watched as the two medical frigates immediately docked with the Eternal Blade and the cruiser Savage Honor, which carried most of his critical patients. "Admiral, we have incoming docking requests from multiple human vessels," his communication officer reported. "They're asking permission to board and begin emergency stabilization procedures." "Grant permission. All ships, cooperate fully with human repair teams." Within minutes, humans were flooding through his ship. Threxus expected military efficiency, perhaps even cold professionalism. What he encountered instead left him bewildered. The humans did not simply scan damage and make notes. They touched the walls, ran their hands over broken systems, spoke to his engineers not as subordinates but as colleagues, comparing notes on a shared problem. A young human male, barely into adulthood by Corthan standards, approached one of Threxus's senior engineers, a grizzled veteran named Korthos, who had been maintaining warships since before this human was born. The young human carried a portable scanner and wore a tool belt that looked like it held more equipment than should be physically possible. "Hey, I'm Danny Chen, structural integrity specialist," the human said, his voice bright and energetic despite the grim surroundings. "I'm seeing stress fractures along your primary keel that go way beyond this recent battle. How long has this ship been in active service?" Korthos's spines flared slightly at the informal tone, but he answered, 17 years of continuous deployment. We perform standard maintenance cycles." Danny ran his scanner along a bulkhead, frowning at the readout. "Standard maintenance for what? Deep space patrol or active combat operations? Because your ship's frame is showing wear patterns consistent with high-stress maneuvers way more frequent than standard patrol routes would cause. The Eternal Blade is a flagship. She sees combat regularly." "Right, okay, that makes sense." Danny pulled out a datapad and started making notes. "So here's the thing. Your maintenance schedule is designed for patrol vessels with occasional combat, but you're running combat operations constantly, which means your ship is accumulating stress damage faster than the standard maintenance can repair it. It's like running a marathon every day but only stretching once a week. Eventually something breaks." Korthos stared at the young human. "You determined this in 5 minutes of scanning?" "Well, yeah. The metal tells a story if you know how to read it." Danny looked up from his datapad. "Look, I'm going to be straight with you. Your ship needs more than emergency repairs. She needs a complete structural reinforcement, probably a refit of your internal support framework. Otherwise, you're going to see catastrophic failures within the next year, maybe sooner. That would take months of work. 6 weeks, actually, if we do it right. But I get it, you probably can't afford that kind of downtime." Danny bit his lip, thinking, "Okay, so here's what we'll do. We'll stabilize everything critical right now. Get you flight-worthy and safe, but I'm going to flag all these stress points in my report. When you can afford a major refit, you come back here and we'll rebuild this beauty properly. Deal?" Threxus, who had been listening from a short distance, found himself drawn into the conversation. "Why would you tell us about problems we did not ask you to find? You could charge us for those repairs now." Danny turned and seemed to notice the Admiral for the first time. He straightened slightly, apparently recognizing rank when he saw it, but his expression remained open and earnest. "Because that would be a scam, sir. You came here for emergency repairs, not a full refit. Yeah, I could tell you the ship won't fly without fixing everything, but that would be a lie. She'll fly fine for months, maybe a year. You deserve to know what your ship really needs so you can make informed decisions. That is not profitable." "No, but it's honest." Danny smiled. "Besides, you'll come back when you're ready for that refit. Everyone does. And when you do, you'll trust us to do the work right because we didn't try to rip you off when you were vulnerable." The human moved on to continue his assessment, leaving Threxus standing in his own corridor feeling oddly off balance. In Corthan culture, one took advantage when advantage was offered. Strength meant seizing opportunities, Yet this young human had deliberately turned away from profit in favor of something he called honesty. The admiral made his way to the medical bay, or what was left of it. The human medical teams had set up temporary facilities in an adjacent cargo hold. Threxus stepped inside and stopped. His wounded warriors lay on clean beds surrounded by monitoring equipment that beeped softly. Human doctors and nurses moved between patients with calm efficiency. But what struck him was the gentleness. A human female with graying hair and kind eyes knelt beside one of his youngest warriors, a soldier named Thrix who had lost his left arm in the battle. She held a small device over the cauterized wound, scanning it carefully. "The pain will get better," she was saying softly. "I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but it will. We've stopped the infection risk, and once we get you to the station, we can fit you with a prosthetic that will feel almost like your original arm." "I am a warrior," Thrix said, his voice thick with pain and medication. "Warriors do not complain about pain." "Maybe not in your culture," the human doctor replied. "But here it's okay to hurt. It's okay to be scared. You nearly died, and that's terrifying. Being brave doesn't mean pretending you're not afraid. It means being afraid and continuing anyway." She adjusted something on the monitor, and Thrix's breathing eased. "There, that should help. Try to rest now. You're safe." Threxus watched as the doctor moved to the next patient, offering the same careful attention, the same gentle words. His warriors, trained from birth to show no weakness, were accepting comfort from this human female. Some were even talking about their fears, their pain, things that would be shameful to discuss among their own people. Something was happening here that Threxus did not fully understand. These humans were not simply repairing ships and healing bodies. They were offering something else, something the Corthan had no word for in their language. Hours passed. The human repair teams worked without stopping, moving through his fleet with tireless energy. Threxus monitored their progress from the bridge, watching reports come in from all 9 ships. The humans were not just patching holes and rerouting power. They were improving systems, upgrading where possible, reinforcing weak points even when not asked. Supervisor Amara Williams contacted him again as the initial stabilization work neared completion. "Admiral, we've completed emergency repairs on all 9 vessels. You're space-worthy and can make the journey to Orbital Forge Station safely. We'll complete the full repairs there." "How long will full repairs take?" "For the entire fleet? 3 weeks, maybe 4 depending on what we find when we do deeper inspections." 3 weeks. Threxus had expected months. "That seems fast for the extent of damage we have sustained." Amara smiled, and it transformed her face from serious to almost warm. "Admiral, we've been doing this for a while now. We're good at it. But more than that, we care about it. Every ship that comes to us carries lives. Those lives matter. We don't just fix ships, we send people home safely. Why?" The question escaped before Threxus could stop it. "Why do you care? We are not your people. These are not your ships. We can pay for repairs, but this level of care, this attention to detail that goes beyond the contract, why do you give it?" Amara was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "Because we're human, Admiral. We can't help it. We look at a broken ship and we don't just see metal and circuits. We see the homes of the people who live aboard. We see the families waiting for those crews to return. We see the history of every battle fought, every light year traveled." She leaned forward slightly. "Every species in the galaxy has taught us that the universe is cold and hard and uncaring. But humans, we decided that if the universe won't care, then we will. We'll care enough for everyone." The communication ended, and Threxus stood alone on his bridge, looking out at the human repair fleet surrounding his damaged ships like protective guardians. For 3,000 years, the Corthan had believed that strength was the ultimate virtue. Power was what mattered. Compassion was weakness. But watching these humans work, seeing how they treated not just ships but the people aboard them, Threxus began to wonder if perhaps the Corthan had been wrong about what true strength really meant. These humans were not the most advanced species. They were not the oldest or the most powerful. But they had something that made fleets from across the galaxy seek them out. They had hearts that refused to accept that caring was weakness. And somehow, impossibly, that made them stronger than any weapon the Corthan had ever built. The fleet began its journey to Orbital Forge Station, escorted by human repair vessels, and Threxus found himself not feeling ashamed of needing help, but grateful that in this vast cold universe, There was one species that had decided that everyone deserved to be cared for, even former strangers, even proud warriors who had never asked for kindness, perhaps especially them. The awakening orbital forge station was not what Admiral Threxus expected. He had seen repair facilities across the galaxy, from the austere military shipyards of the Corthan homeworld to the sprawling commercial docks of the Zenthari trade empire. Each followed a similar philosophy. Efficient, functional, focused solely on the mechanical task of repair. The human station defied all of that. As the Corthan fleet approached, Threxus observed through the view screen what could only be described as organized chaos. Hundreds of ships filled the docking spaces representing dozens of species. Some he recognized, Zenthari freighters, Velcor science vessels, even a small Draxian patrol squadron. Others were completely unfamiliar. The station itself was massive, a sprawling construction of interconnected modules that seemed to have grown organically rather than being built to a single plan. "Admiral, we're being assigned docking coordinates," his helmsman reported. "They're bringing us into Dock Complex Gamma. It appears to be reserved for military vessels." "Are there other military ships present?" "Yes, sir. I'm detecting at least 4 other military vessels from different species. None appear to be in active conflict with each other." That was peculiar. The galaxy was never entirely at peace. Border disputes, trade conflicts, and ancient grudges kept most species at arm's length from each other. Yet here, warships from potentially hostile nations sat side by side in repair docks, apparently unconcerned. The docking process took 2 hours. Human traffic controllers guided each Corthan vessel with precise instructions, their voices patient and encouraging. When the Eternal Blade finally settled into its designated dock, Threxus heard the heavy clamps lock into place with a resonance that vibrated through the deck plating. "Admiral, Supervisor Williams is requesting permission to board with her senior staff." "Granted. Have an honor guard meet them at the primary airlock." Threxus arrived at the airlock to find his honor guard already assembled, 6 of his finest warriors standing at attention in full ceremonial armor. The airlock cycled, and Amara Williams entered, followed by 5 humans carrying various types of scanning and assessment equipment. They all wore the same practical gray uniforms, though Amara's had additional insignia marking her rank. The humans stopped, looking slightly uncomfortable at the formal reception. Amara recovered first, inclining her head respectfully. "Admiral Threxus, thank you for allowing us aboard. This is my senior assessment team. We'd like to begin a comprehensive evaluation of your ships immediately, if that's acceptable. Of course, my staff will provide you with complete access to all systems and damage reports." "Excellent. Before we begin, though, I need to address something." Amara's expression became serious. "Your crew has been through significant trauma, both physical and psychological. We have counselors available on the station, trained in multi-species psychology. I strongly recommend your people take advantage of these services." Captain Verosk, standing beside Threxus, bristled slightly. "Corthan warriors do not require psychological counseling. We are trained to endure hardship." "With respect, Captain, endurance isn't the same as healing." Amara's tone remained gentle but firm. "Your people survived an ambush that killed 42 of their comrades. They've been living on damaged ships, breathing recycled air filled with smoke and carbon, eating emergency rations, and sleeping in shifts for days. That takes a toll on anyone, no matter how strong they are." Threxus considered her words carefully. Among his people, admitting to emotional distress was seen as weakness. But he remembered the human doctor in the temporary medical bay, the way young Thrix had accepted comfort without shame. Perhaps there was wisdom in the human approach. "We will make the counseling services available to any crew member who wishes to use them," Threxus decided. "It will be voluntary, not mandated." Amara smiled. "That's all I ask. Now let's see what we're working with." The assessment took 12 hours. The human teams moved through all 9 Corthan vessels with thorough attention, scanning every system, examining every damaged component, interviewing engineers about the ship's performance history. Threxus followed Amara's team through the Eternal Blade, observing their process. What struck him was their attitude. These humans did not treat his ship like a machine that needed fixing. They treated it with something approaching reverence. One engineer, an older man with silver hair and weathered hands, ran his fingers along a scarred bulkhead and spoke quietly. "This ship has seen real combat. Look at these impact patterns, probably 3, maybe 4 major engagements. She's protected a lot of lives. He turned to Korthas, who was accompanying them. You've kept her flying through all of that. That takes skill and dedication. Korthas, who had initially been hostile to the human presence, seemed taken aback by the compliment. The Eternal Blade is a fine vessel. She deserves proper maintenance, as she does, the human agreed. And she's going to get it. We'll have her better than new when we're done. The comprehensive assessment concluded in one of the station's conference rooms. Threxus sat at a large table with his senior officers on one side and Amara's team on the other. Holographic displays showed detailed schematics of all 9 ships, with damaged areas highlighted in red and orange. Amara stood, gesturing to the displays. Admiral, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Your fleet took a beating. Hull breaches, engine damage, weapon system failures, power distribution problems, life support compromises, the list goes on. However, the good news is that all of this is repairable. What is your estimated timeline? Threxus asked. 3 weeks for full repairs on all 9 vessels. That includes structural reinforcement, system upgrades where components are outdated, and a complete recalibration of your sensor arrays, which we noticed are running about 30% below optimal efficiency. Captain Verosk leaned forward. You propose upgrades beyond our requested repairs? Where it makes sense, yes. Amara pulled up a detailed view of one ship's power distribution network. For example, your power couplings are original equipment from when these ships were built. They work, but they're inefficient by modern standards. We can replace them with newer models at minimal additional cost, which will give you about 15% better power efficiency across all systems. Why would you offer this without additional payment? Amara looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Because we're already in there doing the work. It takes maybe an extra hour per ship to swap the couplings, and the improved efficiency means your ships will perform better and require less maintenance in the future. Why wouldn't we do that? The Korthan officers exchanged glances. This logic was foreign to them. In their experience, service providers did exactly what was paid for and nothing more, yet these humans seemed personally invested in making their ships better. There is one significant issue we need to discuss, Amara continued, her expression becoming more serious. She pulled up the scan of the Eternal Blade's primary structure. Your flagship has accumulated 17 years of combat stress. The young engineer who first assessed her was correct. The structural framework is fatigued beyond what field repairs can address. She needs a complete internal reinforcement. How long would that take? 6 weeks. We'd essentially be rebuilding the ship's skeleton while keeping everything else intact. It's intensive work. Threxus felt his heart sink. 6 weeks without his flagship was unacceptable. The Korthan fleet needed every vessel operational. That is too long. We cannot spare the ship for that duration. I understand. Amara nodded slowly, which is why I'm not recommending you do it now. We'll do the emergency repairs, get her safe and operational. But Admiral, within the next year that ship is going to suffer a catastrophic structural failure. It might happen during a jump to faster than light travel. It might happen during combat maneuvers. But it will happen. And when it does, you'll lose the ship and possibly the entire crew. The conference room fell silent. Threxus looked at the holographic display, seeing the web of stress fractures highlighted in orange throughout his beloved flagship. You are certain of this? As certain as I can be without being able to see the future. The metal is telling us what's happening. We can read the signs. Amara's voice softened. Admiral, I'm not trying to scare you or pressure you into additional services. I'm telling you this because if something happens to your ship and crew, and I knew about the problem but didn't warn you, I couldn't live with that. Threxus studied the human supervisor. She gained nothing from this warning except perhaps losing the opportunity for immediate additional work. Yet her concern seemed genuine. I will need to consult with my superiors about scheduling a major refit. Of course. Whenever you're ready, we'll be here. Amara smiled slightly. In the meantime, we'll make sure all 9 ships are safe and ready for service. The repair work began the next day. Threxus had expected the humans to start with the most critical systems, the engines and power cores that kept ships functional. Instead, they began with life support. Every ship in the fleet had its environmental systems completely overhauled first, ensuring clean air, proper temperature regulation, and clean water before any other work commenced. When Threxus questioned this priority, one of the human engineers, a woman named Sarah Kim, explained while working on an air filtration system. Admiral, your crews have been breathing contaminated air for days. Some of these filters are partially melted from the fires you experienced. Before we do anything else, we make sure everyone can breathe properly, drink clean water, and live in comfortable conditions. Everything else can wait until people are safe and comfortable. But the engines will take 72 hours to repair properly. That's 72 hours your crews have to live aboard these ships. Why should they suffer poor conditions for 3 days when we can fix their environmental systems in 6 hours? Sarah smiled up at him from where she was installing a new filter array. Ships are built to serve crews, Admiral. The crew's well-being always comes first. Threxus found himself walking through the station during the second day of repairs, wanting to understand this place that had become legendary across the galaxy. The station was enormous, a small city floating in space. But what surprised him was how much of it was dedicated to non-repair functions. He discovered gardens, actual living gardens with plants and trees where crew members from various ships could walk and relax. He found recreational facilities, restaurants serving food from dozens of worlds, even a multi-species chapel where individuals could practice their various beliefs. There were schools for the children of permanent station residents, medical centers that rivaled planetary hospitals, and counseling centers where trained professionals helped people process trauma and stress. In one of the gardens, Threxus encountered Thrix, the young warrior who had lost his arm. The soldier sat on a bench beneath something humans called an oak tree, his new prosthetic arm resting in his lap. He stood quickly when he saw his admiral, but Threxus gestured for him to remain seated. "How are you adjusting?" Threxus asked, sitting beside him. "The human doctors say the prosthetic will take time to feel natural. They have been teaching me how to use it." Thrix flexed the artificial fingers, watching them move. "Admiral, I spoke with one of the counselors yesterday. Did you find it helpful?" "Yes, sir. I thought I was weak for being afraid, for having nightmares about the battle. But the counselor explained that these reactions are normal. She said I am not broken. I am injured, and injuries need time to heal, even mental ones." Thrix looked up at the leaves above them. "This place is strange. The humans are strange, but I think I understand now why ships come here." "Why is that?" "Because they care, sir. Not just about fixing the ships, but about the people inside them. They see us as individuals worth caring for, not just as customers or warriors or whatever role we fill. They see us as people who matter." Threxus nodded slowly, looking around the peaceful garden where crew members from half a dozen species walked or sat, enjoying a moment of tranquility. "Yes, I believe you are correct." On the 5th day of repairs, disaster struck. Threxus was reviewing progress reports in a temporary office the humans had provided when alarms blared throughout the station. His communication device activated immediately, Amara's face appearing on the screen, her expression tense. "Admiral, we have an emergency. The Xanthari freighter in Dock 12 just suffered a catastrophic reactor breach. We're evacuating the dock section, but we have a problem. The breach is cascading, and if we can't contain it in the next hour, it could trigger a chain reaction that would destroy half the station and every ship currently docked." Threxus felt his combat training kick in immediately. "What do you need?" "I need every engineer, every technician, everyone who knows how to handle reactor systems regardless of species. We're sending teams into the hot zone to manually shut down the reactor before it goes critical. It's going to be dangerous. My engineers will assist. Where do they need to go?" Amara sent coordinates, and Threxus was already moving, contacting Korthus and ordering all qualified engineers to the emergency site. He arrived at Dock 12 to find controlled chaos. Humans in protective suits were running toward the damaged freighter, carrying equipment and moving with urgent purpose. Engineers from other docked ships were arriving as well. Xanthari, Velcor, even 2 Draxian technicians. Amara stood at a command console coordinating the response. She looked up as Threxus approached with Korthus and 6 Korthan engineers. "Thank you for coming. Here's the situation. The freighter's reactor is melting down. We need to flood the reaction chamber with coolant, but the automatic systems are fried. Someone has to go in manually and open the coolant valves. The radiation levels are extreme. Even with protective suits, anyone going in there is going to absorb a dangerous dose." "How many people do you need?" Korthus asked. 4 teams of 3. Each team handles 1 valve. The work should take about 15 minutes in those conditions. 15 minutes of that level of radiation exposure could be fatal, one of the Xanthari engineers said quietly. "Yes," Amara agreed. her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "That's why I'm only asking for volunteers." Threxus expected hesitation. What he saw instead was every human engineer present stepping forward immediately. Then the Zinthari stepped forward. The Valkor, the Draxian, and his own Corthan engineers moved without being ordered, standing ready. "We're all volunteers," Kortha said simply. Amara's eyes glistened, but her voice remained professional. "Thank you. All of you. Let's get you suited up." The next 20 minutes were the longest of Threxus's life. He stood at the command console watching sensor readings as the mixed species teams entered the radiation zone. Human, Corthan, Zinthari, Velcor, and Draxian engineers worked side by side, their species differences meaningless in the face of the crisis. The communication channel crackled with voices. Team 1, valve accessed. Beginning manual override. Team 2 in position. This valve is partially melted. We're going to need cutting tools. Team 3, coolant line is damaged. Rerouting through secondary system. Team 4 encountering resistance. The valve mechanism is seized. Threxus listened as the team solved problems in real time. Engineers from different species sharing knowledge and techniques, working together with a coordination that should have taken months of training to achieve, yet somehow they functioned as a single unit. "Radiation levels are spiking," someone reported. "Teams need to evacuate." "Negative," a human voice responded. That was Danny Chen, the young engineer who had first assessed the Eternal Blade. "We're almost done. Another 3 minutes. You'll receive a lethal dose. Then we better work fast." 3 minutes and 47 seconds later, the teams emerged from the hot zone. The reactor successfully flooded with coolant, the meltdown contained. Medical teams rushed forward immediately, scanning each engineer and starting emergency radiation treatments. Every person who had entered that zone would spend weeks in medical care, fighting the effects of radiation poisoning. Some might not fully recover. As the medical teams worked, Amara moved among the volunteers, speaking quietly with each one, her hand touching shoulders, her voice offering thanks and reassurance. When she reached Danny Chen, who was already showing symptoms of severe radiation exposure, she knelt beside his stretcher. "You should have evacuated when I ordered," she said, her voice cracking slightly. Danny smiled weakly. "Couldn't leave the job half done, boss. That's not how we do things here. You might have killed yourself, but I didn't, and neither did anyone else. We saved the station. We saved all those ships and crews." Danny's eyes started to close. That's worth a little radiation sickness. Threxus watched as they carried the young human away to intensive care. He thought about what he had just witnessed. Engineers from multiple species, some whose governments were actively hostile to each other, had worked together without hesitation to save lives. And they had done it following the example set by humans who rushed toward danger without thought for their own safety. "Why?" he asked Amara as she stood watching the medical teams leave. "Why did your people risk their lives for a Zinthari freighter? For this station, you could have evacuated and let it be destroyed." Amara turned to look at him, and her eyes were red, but her gaze was steady. "Because that's what we do, Admiral. That's who we are. We don't abandon people. We don't calculate if saving lives is worth the risk. We just act because if we don't, who will?" She gestured toward where the volunteers had disappeared. "And you saw what happened. We didn't just risk ourselves." Everyone stepped forward. Corthan, Zinthari, Velcor, Draxian, all species that supposedly can't work together. But they did, because we showed them it's possible. We showed them that caring isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing anyone can do. The repairs continued. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of work. But Threxus noticed a change in his crew. They no longer simply observed the human workers. They engaged with them, learned from them, shared meals and stories. He saw his warriors laughing with human engineers, discussing philosophy and culture with a curiosity he had never witnessed before. Korthas became particularly close with the human engineer Sarah. Kim Threxus found them one evening in the Eternal Blade's engine room, working side by side on the power distribution network. "Your people have a phrase," Korthas was saying. "Leave it better than you found it. This concept is strange to us. Why would you do more than necessary?" Sarah smiled. "Because we can. Because why would we do the minimum when we can do something wonderful? Every ship that leaves here carries people we've met, people we've talked to, people we care about. When we make a ship better, safer, more efficient, we know we're helping protect those people. That matters to us. Even though you may never see them again, especially then." We put our hearts into the work, and those hearts travel with the ships across the galaxy. Every captain who benefits from a repair we made, every crew member who stays safe because we reinforced a weak point, they carry a piece of human care with them. Sarah looked at Corthus. Your people taught the galaxy about strength through power. Maybe we're teaching about strength through compassion. On the final day, Threxus stood in the main docking bay as the Eternal Blade prepared to depart. His flagship gleamed, not just repaired but improved. Every system functioned at peak efficiency. The hull was not merely patched but reinforced. Even the interior spaces had been cleaned and refurbished, making the ship feel new again. Amara approached him one last time. All 9 vessels are ready for departure, Admiral. We've uploaded complete maintenance logs and recommendations for future care. The critical repairs on the Eternal Blade will hold for about 11 months. After that, you really should schedule that major refit. I will speak with my superiors. I believe I can convince them of the necessity. Threxus paused, choosing his words carefully. Supervisor Williams, I came here expecting a simple transaction. Payment for services rendered. What I found instead was something I did not know existed in this galaxy. What's that? Hope. Your people offer hope that the universe does not have to be cold and hostile. That caring for others is not weakness but strength. That different species can work together not just for profit or temporary alliance, but because it is the right thing to do. Threxus straightened to his full height. The Corthan people have much to learn from humanity. I intend to ensure they have that opportunity. Amara smiled warmly. Admiral, you're welcome back anytime. And not just for repairs. Your crew has made friends here. Those friendships matter. They build bridges between species. The Corthan fleet departed Orbital Forge Station 3 days later than originally scheduled, but no one complained. As the ships jumped to faster-than-light travel, Threxus stood on his bridge and thought about everything he had witnessed. The humans had not just repaired his ships. They had changed how he understood the galaxy and humanity's place in it. Word would spread. It always did. Other Corthan fleet commanders would hear about the human repair docks, about the quality of work and the care given to crews. More ships would come, and with each visit, more people would learn what Threxus had learned, that humans possessed a power greater than advanced technology or military might. They possessed the power to care unconditionally, to see value in every life, to treat strangers as worthy of their best efforts. That was why alien fleets preferred human repair docks, not because they were the fastest or cheapest or most advanced, but because they offered something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten was possible: genuine compassion backed by uncompromising skill. They saw ships not as objects but as homes. They saw repairs not as transactions but as sacred trust. They saw every crew member as an individual whose well-being mattered. In a galaxy that had become cynical and transactional, humans offered something revolutionary. They offered care without conditions, excellence without arrogance, and strength that came not from weapons but from an unshakable belief that every being deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. That was the heart of humanity's power. And it was changing the galaxy, one repaired ship at a time.